Hello YouTube and welcome back in In-Flightsim. Today we're back in DCS world, and over the past few weeks we've been going through and creating some basic items through my previous tutorials. So how to set up a tanker, portable TACANs, radio items, transmissions, randomization, uncontrolled AI, and messages to groups. Today what we're going to do is we're going to bring all those elements together and create a basic training mission. I will point out right now, this is how I do it, and it's personal preference. Like I said, it's just for training rather than anything else. So let's go ahead and jump into the mission editor. So here we are on the Corsair map, and for starters, what we'll do is we'll go to we'll find an airport or an airbase. I intend to use up here. I've chosen this part of the map purely because it doesn't tend to have TACANs, whereas the southern part tends to already have TACANs. So there's not much point in setting up a portable TACAN, but here we are. So what we're going to do is set up a basic mission for some high aspect BFM that we can use just as training, so you can hone your skills in the air-to-air arena. So first things first, let's set out where we want to do our training. So what I will do first is I will create an area where I want to say the training will happen. So let's set up a 10 nautical miles roughly. So it's going to be what, 36,000 feet maybe? It's a little bit big, but let's just change that down to 35,000. Now, you don't have to do this, but I do it purely just so I can sort of manage my map a little bit. Okay, and it just gives you guidelines and sort of like a template where you can mold your mission around. So I'm going to name this training area. Okay, and I'm just going to make it red because I know then that's a combat zone. And there we are. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create our aircraft and then create the little flight plan of where I want to fly to then set up for the engagements. Now, I'm sorry if I don't come across very well. I'm not a natural speaker, but I'm hoping you can get the gist of what I'm trying to put across here, okay? So let's just go and plonk ourselves here. And depending on, you don't have to do this necessarily from the ground. I like to do it from cold and dark, just because I like going through setting up the aircraft and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's just set ourselves up on the ramp. Let's find a livery that we like. Where are we? I tend to like this one. And then again, because it's a training environment, you can set the aircraft up how you like. So I tend to like to fly with at least one tank on, just because, you know, a bit more endurance. Now we are going to put a tanker in, but again, I prefer having the tank, you know. So I'll set up our aircraft here. So we can see we've got a tank on, and I've put some AIM-9s on the wingtips. Chaff, because it's going to be a high aspect BFM sort of thing, we don't really need chaff, because the bandit that we're going to set up, it's not going to have any long range missiles. It's pretty just going to be a guns only fight. I just tend to put AIM-9s on the wings. Just if you end up like you're struggling to beat the bandit, it's just sometimes it's just easy just to then end up just taking them out with an AIM-9, and then you can set up again for another round. Okay, so there we are. Let's change that to us, and then the name, let's just call it, I don't know, Blue Air, and let's change the pilot's name. Call sign, I'm happy with the call sign. I'm not too bothered about that, and that's what's there. Okay. So next I'm going to come down to here, and then this is where I'm going to start to add my waypoints in for the mission. So I'm going to leave here. Let's fly out to just here, this town here. And then depending on how you like to set up your engagements, I tend to keep it simple. So, I'll either start from the north, east, south or west, just because it's just easy headings to remember. So I'll fly out to the northern point, and then I know that 360 is always going to be the top. And then what I'll do is I'll put the bandit in on a 180, so then I know I'm always going to be flying south to engage the target. Obviously, you can put it wherever you like, really. That's just my personal preference. Then what I'll do is we'll call waypoint 2, we'll call it the IP, that's the initial point, and we'll make that a heading of a altitude, of 18,000 feet, which is where we want to start the engagement at. And speed doesn't really make much of a difference if you're the user. It will do for the AI that we put in, and you'll see that in a minute when I set that up. So that's fine. And then I like to put a waypoint in the middle, and then I just call that area. And then I know that is always the middle of my training area, and then I know it's roughly 10 miles either side for that is the bubble that I like to work in. Certainly if I have other things going on in the mission as well, it's just handy that way, I find anyway. And then we'll put a waypoint back in here at this point, and then put the last one in and change that to landing. So this is where we're going to come back to at the end. Okay, and that's us set up really for now. Next, what I want is to have a tanker set up as well. It's easy to burn your fuel when you do it in BFM scenarios. It tends to be in reheat quite a lot. So I'm going to set up a tanker there, so I don't have to, once I get low on fuel, I don't have to return. I can just go and tank off the aircraft and then just come back to the arena and carry on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. I'm going to have, or 3 birds with 1 stone, I should say. I'm going to have an uncontrolled AI set up first. I'm going to randomize it by having 2 different ones. So I'm going to have a KC-130 and a KC-135. And then the randomization will come in, and it'll decide, DCS will decide whether it's going to be a KC-135 that we spawn or a KC-130 that spawns. Okay. Or becomes alive, I should say, since it's already going to be an uncontrolled AI. So let's go down here, and let's go ahead and select KC-130. And let's go ahead and plonk him on the airfield, and we'll set him from takeoff from ramp. This is what we need in order to select or have our uncontrolled AI option available. So I'm going to go ahead and tick that. Let's just call him KC-130. Do the same there. Call sign is going to be Texaco 11, and we'll call the other tanker a different call sign, just so we have a bit. They are slightly different. Next, what I want to do is go ahead down to our tanker and set up his frequency, TACAN channel, I should say. So, channel is going to be X-ray. Channel is 55. That's just what I call it, personal preference. Or make sure it's assigned to our aircraft. And then let's go ahead and give him, set him up to fly out to a point, and then set up our tanker track. So let's once he's taken off, he's fly out to here, and I want him to be at, let's say, 12,000 feet at 330 knots. Excuse me. Okay, and then now we need to set up our tanker track. Now in the tanker tutorial, I mentioned that my personal preference is I like to have them in a racetrack pattern rather than a circular orbit. So we'll go ahead and set that up now. So from waypoint 1 to waypoint 2, So let's just make that straight. The line there just kills my OCD. And I want him to do an orbit around those two waypoints. So we need to go back to waypoint 1. Add, and so we're going to add like a condition that he's going to do, and he's going to perform a task of orbiting in a racetrack pattern at, we'll say 330 knots. Now, if I remember correctly, this is ground speed that they'll be at, not indicated airspeed. Okay, so although it's 330 knots there, actually in the game it'll probably be something like, I don't know, 260 knots maybe. Well, let's add a stop condition. So I only want him in the air for about an hour. An hour and 15. Yeah, an hour and 15 will be fine. So he's going to orbit there for an hour and 15. And then let's go back to waypoint 2. And let's then set another waypoint there. So once he's over Napa, he's then going to turn and head back to base and land. And again, like I said before, if you have uncontrolled ticked prior to anything else, and then make the aircraft land, it'll untick itself. Why that happens, I don't know. So let's go ahead and tick that. And then triggered actions here on the menu. We need to ensure that we have the start trigger available. Otherwise, once we come up to do our triggers later on, it's not going to work. The aircraft will just sit there forever and a day. Okay. So now that he's set up, we can either select a KC-135 and put the flight plan in again, or we can just Control C for copy, and then Control P, and it'll just paste the same route in it again with all the same information. But what we're going to do now is we're going to change that to a KC-135 MPRS, as we are in a Hornet, so we want to have the probe and drogue method. As you can see there's our aircraft. Happy with the livery there, and let's just change his name to KC-135. KC-135. Okay. Arco instead of Taxico, so we know we can differentiate between what's going to be refueling us. It's uncontrolled. The trigger is still there, and then we just need to ensure that our TACAN for the aircraft is assigned. Once you copy and paste it, it'll deselect more or less what you've done on a previous aircraft, so we need to put it in again. So we can put the same TACAN channel in, because we know once we put our random trigger in, it's only going to trigger one of the two aircraft, not both of them. So you can have the same TACAN, they're not going to interfere with each other. And we'll make sure we've got the KC-135 selected. Okay. So there we go, it's going to go do the exact same thing. So we'll go out to waypoint 1, and we'll just ensure that it's going to do the same thing. Racetrack at 330 knots. And because it's a KC-135, it can fly at a bit of a higher speed. So again, we'll up that to 380 knots, and then the ground speed will probably be something like maybe 300, 310, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see in the game. We'll make sure the stop condition is still the same, so it's 1 hour 15, which is fine. So that's going to orbit there for 1 hour 15 as well, and then it will return to base. Cool. So that's our tankers set up basically for now. So what we'll do now is we will create the random triggers for them, so only one of them will spawn or trigger rather than both. So if we come up here, and this is where it's going to get interesting now, and probably the most useful part. So let's put this one as KC-130 start. Conditions. Now this is how I like to do it, and it tends to work. So we need to ensure these aircraft are going to go off trigger 1. So we need to make sure trigger 1 is false, or flag 1 is false, sorry. We need to time is more than 10 seconds, so 10 seconds after mission start. You can change that to any time you want. You know, if you want it to start an hour later, you can do, or if you want it to start on the first second, it will do. And then let's go down to random. and then 5%. Again, I explained in the randomization tutorial why I choose 5%. I don't know if it's foolproof, but it works for me, so that's what I stick with. Okay, so if these conditions are met, then what we want to do is AI task push. So KC130 start. Select a KC130 there because that's the trigger that we're using. We could put KC135, but then it's just confusing ourselves because we've named it something else. And then once it's alive, flag on, flag 1 is on. So this is what we need in order to get the KC130 started. So what we can do is, rather than doing all that again, we can just clone that, and it copies everything into another one. So we'll change that to KC135. These have to stay the same in order for DCS to pick between the two. And then we'll just change this from KC130 to a 135. And there we have our random tanker start setup. So there we go. Tanker is done. Tick that off the list. Now let's go ahead and quickly set up our portable TACAN. Now this airfield doesn't have a TACAN station on it, so let's go ahead and add one so we can navigate back to it should we lose the ability to use our waypoints in the aircraft. So if I remember rightly, it's under fortification. If I remember rightly, scroll down the list to beacon at TACAN portable, and then we can go ahead and plonk him anywhere. Let's just put him slap bang in the middle. Let's change him. Let's just change his name to TACAN. And we don't want him to be a late activator or anything like that. I want him there straight from the start. He's not going to go anywhere, so there's no need to add in any waypoints. But we do need to add some action, or an action at least. So in the list, we want to perform command into the drop down and then activate TACAN. We want to receive a bearing from the TACAN. The channel could be X or Y. Let's keep it as X. And then let's make sure we don't put in another TACAN channel that could be nearby. So we don't want DCS to see two TACANs that are the same channel in the same vicinity, otherwise it won't know where to point to. So I know 82 isn't around here. So TACAN channel 82 X-ray, let's just call it KYK for short, and then let's assign it to our TACAN. Okay, so let's just make a tick of that and make a note of the channel 82 X-ray, and we're happy there. So next, let's go ahead and set up our what we're going to go out and fight against. So I know that this is a 11 nautical mile radius, not radius, a distance from my IP there to the bottom of the training area. So let's go ahead and start to put our aircraft in. Now we need to select, so let's go ahead against some, MiG-29Ss, shall we? And we can go ahead and plonk him on the map. Now high-spec BFM is obviously going head-to-head. So I've put him directly opposite from where I'm going to come from. And let's call him TGT1. Control-C. We can change the skill level to suit whatever you want. Sometimes I like to put it on random, just while getting into the groove of things. I'm not a hugely proficient dogfighter, so going up against an ace probably not the best thing for me. But obviously, change that to your skill level. I'll just leave it as veteran for the purpose of this tutorial. What we want him to be late activated. If he's not late activated, he will just spawn straight in on the mission start, and that's it. Okay. Because this is going to be a guns only fight, I'm not going to give him any missiles. There's just no need. Obviously, if you want to do use missiles and try and defend against them, then you can add missiles. The purpose of this is just going to be a guns only fight, so I'm not going to give him any missiles. Okay, so then what I want to do to begin with, so before I put any route in for him, because at the minute he hasn't got a direction to fly from, so he'll just spawn in. I'm not entirely sure which direction he'll spawn in. So what we'll do is we'll give him an altitude of 18,000 feet, which is where we want to have the engagement at. Gives you plenty of room then to work your way down to a lower level. An airspeed of 450 knots. Okay. And then we need to... I like to add some triggers here, because what sometimes I've found is, say if I've got that tanker sat behind me, the target or the bandit won't engage me. He'll go straight for the tanker. And then obviously you're not fighting him, you're just trying to stop him getting to the tanker. Whereas I want him to engage me. So what I will do is, because we are in cap, so he's looking for air-to-air targets, I want him to perform a task en route. And this is where we can then select what we want him to do. We can either let him search and engage anybody, search and engage somebody in a zone. So that'll give you a zone, and anybody that flies into that zone, he will engage a particular group or a particular unit. Now, because there's only me, I'm going to go ahead and select a unit and make sure, and then here it gives us a lot of options. So the group that I want him to engage is blue air, which I know is me. So you can see there's a red line there, and that's what he gives you that he's looking for. Static, don't need to worry about that. I don't know what that is. Visible, again, don't really know what that is. Weapon, what weapons I want him to use. In this case, it's just going to be auto, because he's only going to have a gun, so he's only going to use a gun. Max attack quantity. For this it's not really relevant, because hopefully he should only survive one engagement, and then hopefully he should be dead. If there's more than one of him, so if I give him a wingman, is it going to be a group attack? Yes, I want both red air or targets to engage me. Direction from, where do I want him to attack me from? So I'm not going to tick that, because then he can then use his own initiative to attack me, rather than me telling him I want you to attack from this direction. Altitude above, he's going to spawn in at 18,000 feet, and then again he'll use his own initiative to change his altitude depending on what he wants to do. And then I want to set my the priority as number 1, which means that I, as the blue air, are his first priority. Okay. And then let's just give him a waypoint to fly forward. So then I know when he spawns in, he's going to be already facing this direction and flying towards me. Okay. And that's our target set up. Now, because we're going to be using radio items to spawn them, this means it's only going to be available once, and the way that we're going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy him. I'm going to add 5 of these guys. Okay, so I always want them to spawn in roughly the same place. So I'm going to change that to target 2. Target 3. Target 4. And then the last one, target 5. Okay. So now I have 5 aircraft that will spawn in when I tell them to, once we do the triggers. At the minute, they're late activated, so they're waiting for a trigger to happen in order to come alive. Okay. So now this is where we're going to go into the triggers and put in the radio item so that I can choose when I want them to spawn in. So when I'm ready to start the engagement, I can use the radio item and one of them will come alive. Okay. So let's call this TGT1 radio. Okay. So for this one, we don't need a condition. We just need a radio item. So radio item. So here we can choose add radio items. That'll be for everybody. Radio item for coalition. So any blue force or red force, or whatever coalition you want them to have. Or radio item add for group. So I just want this because it's only going to be for me. And here you can see I can select any group that I want to have this radio item. Because I'm the only player, it's just going to be for me. Then the name of the radio item. So I'm going to say, let's just call it Fight 1. Now, flags. We already know that the tankers are on flag 1. So we want this to be flag 2. That way it's not going to in conflict with any of these, with the tankers. Okay. So flag 2 for target number 1. Next, we want to have TGT2. Target 1 activate. So now we know it's flag 2 is what's going to turn on once we use the radio item. We can say once flag is true, so once flag 2 is true, then we're going to group activate target number 1. And then we have it. Okay, so the radio item is for my group, so blue air. The name of the radio item is going to be Fight 1. The flag we are using is flag 2. And the value is we want flag 2 to increase by value of 1, so we want it to go from off to on. So then once flag 2 is true, then group will activate target number 1. Okay? And now we want to do that for the rest of the targets. I'll bring you back once I've done the rest of them. It's quite a tedious thing. Okay, so welcome back. So I've gone ahead and created all 5 of them. As you can see, I've named them targets 1 radio, target 1 activate, and so on for the rest of them. So as you can see here, we saw that was blue air, the group that I wanted to be available for, Fight 1, flag 2, because this is so we don't conflict with the tankers. And then I've just gone down the list and increasing the flag. So for example, target 2 is now under flag 3. These need to be on separate flags. Otherwise, say if they're all on flag 2, you'll have 5 targets spawn in all at the same time. So this way, only 1 target will spawn in as and when you want it. Okay. So target 2 is flag 3. Target 3 is flag 4. Target 4 is flag 5. And target 5 is flag 6. And it's the same for the actual activation part. So once your flag, so for example here, for Fight 4, it's under flag 5. Once flag 5 is true, the target that we want will spawn. Okay. So now that is added. Okay. So next, what I want to do is I want to send myself a message. So before any engagement begins, I know what altitude I need to be at and what airspeed. You know, because you've created a mission here, but once you've created it, you might not fly it for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, and you might forget some information like that. So it's handy to put in a little message to yourself on the fly that'll tell you what altitude and airspeed that you need to be at for this setup. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to create trigger zone. We're going to create another one, and then let's just create it here. So it gives us a bit of time after we've flown through it to set up. So let's call it Fight Setup. Let's just change to black so it stands out. And that's all we need to do for that point there. So back into triggers. So what I want to happen is, let's call it Fight Setup Message. So next, I want to come down here. What I want is unit in zone. So it'll then, it's only when I fly through that zone is that it will give me that message. So unit inside zone. So I'm going to select, make sure we are selected, so we're blue air. And then make sure I've got the right zone selected. So we know it's fight setup, because we just created it there. And then once we're in that zone, we want a message to group. So again, make sure that we are selected. We are blue air. Then what I want the message to say. So I want to tell myself that I need to initiate the target at waypoint 2, the IP for the target to spawn. So does that smell right? We'll go with it. Initiate target at waypoint 2. The altitude that we need to be at the setup of the engagement is 18,000 feet. Airspeed. That we need to be at the start of the engagement. So set up at a neutral point, then the target will control himself anyway, so he'll probably end up going full throttle. And then we can do whatever we want after that. But we start at this, I like to start at the same point and then see how it develops. So I set him up, the target at 450 knots. Okay. And that is it. And then I can just say, like, afterwards, fights on, whatever. I want that message to last for 30 seconds. Once it's been shown in the sim. I'm not too bothered about clear view, and I don't want any start delay to happen. So now once I fly through that zone, it'll give me some information that I need to, or that I want myself to initiate the fight at waypoint 2, the IP. In fact, I should probably put in what heading I need to fly as well. So alt airspeed. Heading of 180 degrees. Heading of 180. So now I know that at waypoint 2 I need to be at 18,000 feet. I need to fly 180 at an airspeed of 450 knots. Okay, so that's that setup. So the last thing I'm going to add into this mission here is a radio transmission. Now this is just something I like to have in the background. It just adds a bit of realism sort of thing. So what I've done is I've managed to download some audio from, I think it's Edmonton Centre, or I've got Edmonton Centre and Luke Air Force Base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in the game, so I can tune to a frequency and I can listen to some realistic radio chatter in the background. So for that we need to create a little zone. So it doesn't need to be that big. So let's just call it radio transmission. Okay, not bothered about the color for that. Let's just pop it there. Okay. So let's go back into our triggers, and let's just call it radio transmission. Radio transmission. It doesn't need to be any condition. And we'll go ahead to the actions, and let's do radio transmission. Now this is where you can add your file. It can be any recording. You can even create your own audio file of you talking, and you can play that in the aircraft. So like I said, I've got one of I've got Edmonton Centre there, and I've got one from Luke Air Force or Luke Approach from a specific time, and I can have that playing in the background. And hopefully somebody should talk on that at some point. Okay, that's what I'm going to use. So the zone that I want it to transmit from is here, radio transmission. So let's go ahead and select that zone. Modulation, choose AM or FM, change to AM. Do we want the audio to loop? So once it finishes, after 32 minutes and 1 second, will it start again? So I'm going to say yeah, why not? Frequency of 124, yeah, I'm happy with that. Power, obviously this depends on how far then the radio signal will reach. Then the name, let's just call it radio transmission, sorry. So I know then if I'm tuned to 124.000 on AM, I should hear whatever this file has. Okay. And that's it for the setup. Okay, so as you can see, quite a simple setup really, but you can see it can start to snowball if you want to start to make it more complicated and add more things. Like I said, this is just a basic mission that I like to set up. So with that in mind, what I don't want to happen, as this is only a training scenario, is I don't want the target to gun me down and then effectively kill me, because then I just have to start again. You know, so start from the cold and dark setup. Because it's a training scenario, what I can do is I can make myself immortal and I can give myself unlimited weapons. Again, if I run out of weapons, then mission's over. Okay. So if I select our aircraft, so I know this is my waypoint, so this brings up my aircraft. I can go ahead and come down to actions, perform command, and then make myself immortal, so I can't die. Again, because this is only a training scenario, I don't want to die. I want to be able to fight them once. Okay, if I lose, then I can see and sort of dissect how I lost directly in the game, and then go and set up for another run. Okay. And then we also need to, once we've done that, we need to come up here to customize, and this is going to be able to, where we can customize our mission. A lot of it's self-explanatory, and if you hover over them, then it gives you, tells you what they are and what they do. So labels, yeah, we can have labels on full because we can choose to turn them off in the game anyway. F10 menu options, yes, I want them on, so I want to be able to see anything I can. Yes, I want to be able to view externally, and this is what we want. We want immortal on here, and we want unlimited weapons. So, you know, again, for unlimited weapons, you could use all your ammunition on one fight, and then that's it, your mission's over. So again, because it's a training scenario, I want to have unlimited weapons, so I can just keep going and going and going and going, and, you know, you're building up that foundation of being able to fight, and then, you know, the better you get, you'll then be able to, you know, utilize your weapons better. Okay. For the sake of this, again, you know, you've got easy communications here, so if you do that, you don't have to put in the frequencies. Radio assist, again, all helps. And so on, there's a lot of different options here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump in, and let's give everything a go and see if it's all working. Okay, so here we are in the mission now. So you can see we've got our two tankers here. So if you remember rightly, the triggers that we set was after 10 seconds, one of these two will start. So let's have a look and see what we're going to get given today. Whether we're going to get the KC-135 or the KC-130. And to me, I think it's going to be the KC-130, because you can see we've got the pilot in the cockpit now. If we go back to the KC-130, we haven't got the pilots in there. They're not there. So I know today that we're going to have the KC-135. It's going to be the aircraft of choice that we're going to be tanking from. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, our tanker there, KC-135, is just on its way. Set the aircraft up. You can see here in blue our TACAN unit, our portable TACAN unit that we put in. You can see 82 X-ray was the channel that we gave it. We turned it on, and now you can see our aircraft is picking that TACAN station up. Next, let's have a look at our radio transmission that we put in. So if we go to manual, 124.000 is the frequency that we wanted it to happen. As you can hear, our file that we put in is now working. Okay. Also, if we bring up our, let's just turn him down a little bit. If we bring up our menu here, our audio communications menu, we have an option called Other. Click on that. You can see all our fights that we set up for our targets are there. Okay. So we'll be able to initiate them at waypoint 2, the one that we want it to happen at. Okay. So let's go ahead and. So we're now on our way to our target area or training area. We've just passed the first waypoint, on the way to the second, and then soon we should hopefully fly through that trigger area where we will get a message giving us some information on what we want or what we need to be at in order for our setup. Okay, so 12 nautical miles to run until waypoint 2. As we can remember from earlier, we said that's the waypoint we want everything, or we want to initiate the bandit at. So we should get a message shortly saying, giving us that information. He says. So we'll go ahead and turn our late arm on. Hopefully we should get a message any second now. There we go. So it's telling us to initiate the target at waypoint 2, altitude 18,000 feet, heading once we're at waypoint 2 of 180, and we want an airspeed of 450 knots, and then fights on. Okay. So if we bring up our radio option menu here, we can go to select other, and here we can have fight 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So nearly at waypoint 2. So once we're at waypoint 2, go ahead and initiate the first fight. So we should spawn in the first MiG-29. So waypoint 2, the first aircraft's in. So let's come around now to a 180. And there we can see, there's our MiG. So let's go ahead and lock him up. As you can see, we're now in the fight. Okay, guns only. So what, 5 nautical miles now from the bandit. He's probably steaming at me. And we are off to the races. So this is basically how I like to set up for a basic high-spec BFM training mission. Again, personal preference really. You don't have to have it with unlimited weapons or unlimited fuel and so on. It's just personal preference because it's training. I want to be able to keep going and going and going as long as I can. And then once I've run out of fuel, I can go ahead and hit the tanker and refuel. Again, once I've finished, I can just punch in my TACAN that we set up for the airfield and I can find my way back. It's as simple as that. Once this aircraft's dead, I can then go ahead, set myself up again, fly back to that initial point at waypoint 2 and spawn in the second bandit. I hope you found this useful. Again, it's not, I don't know if it's foolproof or not, but it's what I use and I quite enjoy it. It works for me. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to help you out where I can. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.